Let's talk about news on the radio. News on the radio was important to the medium. Radio was where people could listen in, stay informed about what was going on, not just in their communities, but listeners were getting world news. And one of the first nationally respected radio journalists, Bob, was a guy by the name of Bob Trout. In fact, before we talk about him, let's just take a listen to, here's a clip of Bob Trout. I believe this is 1941. This is Bob Trout doing a story about how England is responding to the attack on Pearl Harbor. Take a listen.
Report on British reaction to the latest moves in the Near East and the Far East. Bob Trout is standing by in the British capital. Go ahead, London.
London heard its first news of the attacks on Hawaii and the Philippines from John Charles Daly in New York just a few moments ago. It is, of course, too early to give you any reaction, but as you know, the British government made plain what would happen if America became involved in war with Japan.
Bob, talk about why you think people like Bob Trout there and Edward R. Murrow and news overall was so important to radio in those early days. What do you think?
Well, for one thing, radio was their only source of information. There was no internet. There were no websites back then. There was no streaming. That technology didn't exist. And, of course, there was no cell phones. So you couldn't pick up your smartphone and punch up a news site. So radio was it. You turned on your radio with all those glowing tubes, and that's where you got your information from. I think Robert Trout was on CBS. I'm not sure. But
CBS News,
and CBS was a big one. So you turned on your local CBS affiliate in your area, and that's where you got your news.
Trout was the first reporter to do a daily news program on the radio. So, think about it. Before television, obviously there's no internet. I know millennials everywhere who are listening to the show, the one and two of them there are, they're like, mind blown. But no, that's where people got their news. And, it was quite fascinating when you look back on how important, and people have heard Edward R. Murrow, but I that's one thing that I wanted to do in my docuseries is draw light to Bob Trout, because he was, in fact, Edward R. Murrow's mentor. Both CBS News employees, kind of cool.
Very, very interesting. And CBS, like I said, was a big one back in those days.